The rain hammered against the windows of our little cottage in the Cotswolds, mirroring the storm raging inside me. For 20 years, Ingrid and I had built a life here, a life I thought was filled with love and laughter. I'm Alaric, a 46-year-old software engineer, and until a few weeks ago I believed I had it all. A beautiful wife, a comfortable home, and a career I enjoyed. Now I'm not so sure about any of it. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Ingrid, a vibrant and outgoing artist, began to withdraw. Our evenings, once filled with conversation and shared laughter, became quiet, punctuated only by the hum of the television. She started spending more time at her studio, claiming a surge of inspiration, but her paintings remained unfinished, canvases gathering dust in the corner. I chalked it up to stress, a creative block, something temporary. I tried to be supportive, bringing her tea, asking about her day, but my efforts were met with curt responses and averted eyes. Then came the phone calls. Whispered conversations, hushed tones, always when I wasn't around. If I entered the room, the calls would end abruptly, Ingrid offering some flimsy excuse about a client or a gallery owner. I tried to ignore it, to trust her, but a nagging feeling gnawed at my gut, a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. One Saturday, Ingrid told me she was going to a weekend art retreat in Bristol. I offered to drive her, but she insisted on going alone, saying she needed the time to herself to prepare. I kissed her goodbye, a peck on the cheek that felt strangely distant, and watched her drive away, a knot tightening in my stomach. That evening I found myself restless, unable to focus on anything. I decided to surprise Ingrid, to bring her flowers and a bottle of wine, to show her that I was thinking of her. The drive to Bristol was uneventful, the rain finally subsiding, leaving a glistening sheen on the country roads. I arrived at the retreat center, a quaint, ivy-covered building on the outskirts of the city, and parked the car. The receptionist, a young woman with a friendly smile, informed me that Ingrid wasn't registered for the retreat. My heart skipped a beat. There must be a mistake, I thought. I explained the situation, but she insisted, checking the list again and again. Ingrid's name was nowhere to be found. Panic began to set in. Where was she? What was she doing? I thanked the receptionist and left, my mind racing, 1,000 possibilities swirling through my head. I pulled out my phone and tried to call Ingrid, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Something was terribly wrong. Driven by a desperate need to know the truth, I decided to check Ingrid's studio. It was a small space above a bakery in town, a place she loved, filled with her paints, her brushes, her creations. I had a key, so I let myself in, the familiar scent of turpentine and linseed oil filling my nostrils. The studio was empty, but something felt off. A canvas was turned to the wall, and I instinctively reached out and flipped it around. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a painting of Ingrid nude in a passionate embrace with another man. The man's face was obscured, but there was no mistaking the intimacy, the raw desire in the image. I staggered back, my legs weak, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. I sank into a chair, the painting a silent accusation in the corner of the room. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? The questions pounded in my head, each one a fresh wave of pain. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly heartbroken. I spent the next few hours in a daze, staring at the painting, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Eventually, I pulled myself together and decided to go home. I needed to confront Ingrid, to demand answers, to understand how she could do this to me. She arrived late Sunday evening, looking tired but radiant. I watched her walk through the door, my heart aching with a mixture of love and resentment. I wanted to hold her, to tell her how much I missed her, but the image of the painting burned in my mind, a barrier between us. Was the retreat? I asked, my voice strained. It was wonderful, she said, her eyes shining. So inspiring. I got so much done, really. I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Because they didn't seem to have you registered. Face paled. What are you talking about? I went to Bristol, Ingrid. I went to the retreat. They said you weren't there, she stammered, trying to come up with an explanation, but I cut her off. I also went to your studio, I said, my voice trembling. I saw the painting, tears welled up in her eyes. Alaric, please let me explain. What? I shouted, my anger finally erupting. Explain how you could betray me like this. Explain how you could lie to my face. Explain who that man is, she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. It just happened, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't supposed to happen. Who is he, Ingrid? I demanded. She hesitated, then finally whispered, his name is Bertram. He's a fellow artist, Bertram. The name tasted like poison on my tongue. How long has this been going on? A few months, she admitted, her eyes filled with shame. A few months. My entire world crumbled around me. The woman I loved, the woman I had shared my life with for 20 years, had been lying to me, deceiving me, betraying me for months. I don't understand, I said, my voice cracking. Why, Ingrid? Why would you do this to me? I don't know, she sobbed. I was bored. I felt neglected. I needed something more. Bored, neglected. I had worked tirelessly to provide for her, to support her dreams, to give her everything she wanted. And this was how she repaid me. With lies and betrayal. I'm so sorry, Alaric, she said, reaching out to me. Please forgive me. I recoiled from her touch. Forgive you, I said, my voice filled with contempt. How can I ever forgive you? You've destroyed everything we had. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, alone in the rain. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't stay there, not for another minute. I needed to escape, to find some way to heal, to rebuild my life. I spent the next few days in a haze, numb with grief and anger. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think. I wandered aimlessly through the house, haunted by memories of Ingrid, of our life together, of the love that had once been. My friend Crispin, a gruff but loyal mechanic, came to check on me. He found me sitting in the dark, staring blankly at the wall. Alaric, what's going on? He asked, his voice filled with concern. I told him everything, pouring out my heart, sharing the pain and the betrayal that had consumed me. Crispin listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. You deserve better than that, mate, he said, his eyes filled with anger. She's a fool to throw away what you had. What am I going to do, Crispin? I asked, my voice filled with despair. I don't know where to go from here. Going to get through this, he said, his voice firm. You're going to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start again. And you're going to show her that you're better off without her. Words gave me a glimmer of hope, a spark of determination. I knew he was right. I couldn't let Ingrid's betrayal destroy me. I had to find a way to move on, to rebuild my life, to find happiness again. The first step was to confront Bertram. I needed to look him in the eye, to understand what kind of man would knowingly sleep with another man's wife. Crispin offered to come with me, but I insisted on going alone. This was something I had to do myself. I tracked Bertram down to his studio in Bath, a trendy space filled with modern art and pretentious sculptures. I found him working on a piece, a smug look on his face. Bertram, I said, my voice cold. He turned around, his eyes widening in surprise. Who are Alaric? I said, stepping closer. Ingrid's husband, his face paled. I didn't know she was married. Don't give me that crap, I said, my anger rising. She told you all about me. She told you about our life together. It just happened, he stammered. We couldn't help ourselves. You couldn't help yourselves, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You knowingly destroyed a marriage, caused immense pain, and you're telling me you couldn't help yourselves. He looked down, ashamed. I'm sorry, he mumbled. Sorry, I said, my voice rising. Sorry isn't good enough. You've ruined my life. I wanted to hit him, to lash out, to inflict the same pain he had inflicted on me. But I resisted the urge. He wasn't worth it. He wasn't worth sacrificing my own dignity. Stay away from my wife, I said, my voice firm. If I ever see you near her again, you'll regret it. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, a pathetic figure in his trendy studio. I felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had confronted him, that I had stood up for myself. But the pain remained, a deep ache in my heart. I returned home and began the process of divorce. Ingrid didn't fight it. She knew she was in the wrong. She signed the papers, packed her bags, and left, leaving me alone in the cottage that had once been our sanctuary. The days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. I slowly began to rebuild my life. I focused on my work, threw myself into new hobbies, and spent time with my friends. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years, finding solace in the creative process. One day, I received a letter from a solicitor. It was from Bertram's wife, Fenella. She had found out about the affair and was divorcing him. She had also discovered that he had been using her money to fund his lavish lifestyle and his art career. Fenella thanked me for exposing Bertram's true nature. She said she had been suspicious of him for months, but had never been able to prove anything. My actions had finally given her the courage to leave him. I felt a sense of vindication. knowing that Bertram had faced the consequences of his actions. But it didn't bring me any joy. It didn't erase the pain and the betrayal that I had experienced. I continued to move forward slowly but surely. I sold the cottage in the Cotswolds and moved to a small apartment in London. I started dating again, cautiously, learning to trust again. I met a wonderful woman named Letitia, a kind and compassionate librarian who helped me to heal and to open my heart again. One evening, a few years later, I was walking through a park in London when I saw Ingrid. She was sitting on a bench looking worn and tired. She was alone. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Should I approach her? Should I ignore her? I decided to walk over and say hello. Ingrid, I said, my voice hesitant. She looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. Alaric, she said, her voice barely a whisper. We stood there for a moment in silence, the years of history hanging between us. Are you? I asked. I'm okay, she said, her voice flat. How are good? I said, smiling. I'm happy. She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret. I'm glad, she said. I'm happy for you. About you, Ingrid, I asked. Are you happy? She hesitated, then shook her head. No, she said. I'm not. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, my voice filled with genuine sympathy. I made a mistake, Alaric, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I threw away the best thing I ever had. It's okay, Ingrid, I said, my voice gentle. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them and to move on. I reached out and took her hand, a gesture of forgiveness, a sign that I had finally let go of the anger and the resentment. I have to go, I said, squeezing her hand. It was nice to see you, Ingrid. I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there alone in the park. I didn't look back. I had finally found peace, finally found closure. I had survived the betrayal, rebuilt my life, and found happiness again. And that was all that mattered. I hope you too, dear reader, can find the strength to overcome the pain of betrayal and build a brighter future for yourself. Remember, you are not alone, and healing is always possible.